Kenny. Welcome to Culture Connect TV, and we're delighted to have you here. You're one of my heroes as a painter.
Thank you.
I wanted to just share that I met you at Art House, and you had an opening, and James Bocci and Annette Schutz run Art House in San Francisco, and it was extraordinary. I walked in and I couldn't believe it. Can you tell us about that project that you showed there?
Yeah, that's actually kind of a fun story. I was driving to school one day and I had this sort of flash that I realized that I was making art that wasn't interactive. I mean, you know, some of my earlier stuff, you know, I had photo shoots with friends and I did these things that were based on cliches that everybody could relate to. But I realized that I had this big collection of photo booth photos and I was sitting in front of the TV most nights and making drawings of these people. And I realized that I really loved making paintings of them, and then I started finding junk in the street. My wife calls me the Crow. And I started collaging those things together. And so I called up James because it didn't seem like the kind of thing he'd want to do. And I explained what I want to do is I want to offer drawings from these antique photos that were photo booth photos and paintings that I had made, both the same person, and ask people to interact with me on the web through a blog and write what's called flash fiction, which are about 1,000 words or less short stories. Oh, wow. And yeah, it was very exciting. And I was telling them, you know, because I already pitched it to the Art Museum of Los Gatos and they were cool with it. And I said, you know, I'd really like to do this project and I'd like to have a photo booth there. I'm going to publish all the stories in a newspaper, and I'm going to give whoever wrote the best story, I gave them a drawing of the character that they wrote about. So James said, well, why can't I do it? And I was like, really, you do that? And so it generated into like a 2-year-long project where Wow. It was first at Art House, yeah. So, and then it went on to a couple of museums and some college galleries. It was really a blast, really fun.
So you took these pictures that you collect that were taken in photo booths. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You created drawings, and then you posted those on the blog. And how did you get them to the writers?
Oh, see, I think that making art is not just the end product, the art you produce, but sort of performance art, I guess. And so what I've been doing, I really believe that artists work in a vacuum a lot of the time, so I decided that I was going to write to as many authors and read as many authors' blogs as I could. So I was reading all this flash fiction online and really inspired by a lot of these writers, so I would actually visit people online and specifically write them a letter saying, I read this, this, and this story. These are the elements I really liked in it. Would you be interested in participating in this? I will give you the rights to your story back, but I'll also send you in payment for the best story a drawing.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just one of your many bodies of work. And I read that a critic wrote that your work is kind of like
Edward Hopper, yeah.
Hopper, I always get his name wrong, and pulp fiction, and kind of there's a film noir aspect to your work, and it really does. They're so evocative, and each one is so narrative. How did you get to the narrative, or how did you develop this style?
Well, I guess it's like you talk about the whole arc of my career, but it starts with an article I read in graduate school by this guy named Roland Barthes. And he wrote this article called Death of the Author, which, not to be confused with Death of a Salesman. And it basically says that the gist of it is everyone creates their own work of art when they come into contact with it. So I started realizing that I was powerless to tell a story completely through art, and that what I decided to do was start thinking about the people who I was pitching the paintings to and the audiences. So I decided to make art in interaction with other people. And so, for instance, paintings like this one, Territory, here, are, I had a party at my friend Todd's house. Todd Heapy was also a filmmaker. And he showed me how to set up lights and stuff. And we just did film shoots with everybody getting drunk. And I had a pad full of ideas. And then I started making the paintings. And since they're all of my friends, it was a nice interaction. And so that's been the skein or the thread that I've been trying to take through all of my art is I don't want to just make it for myself as if it's like what I have to express is so important. I want it to be an interaction with other people. And everybody brings their own story to a painting and makes up their own story. So that's how I started.
And you're like, what is, you said the arc of your career or your work, like where did you go from there, or where are you now?
You know, I think if you look at the painting that's behind me, which is called Late Night Picture Show, it's a collage made from this really wonderful guy named Brian Newland, who works as an animator, sent me a website called Big Happy Funhouse. And this guy, Ron Slattery, has the most wonderful photos that he collects at flea markets. So some of them are these amateur photos of underlit people and things like that. So I did a film shoot with my brother Neil and had him sit in front of a TV. He was wearing his wife's tank top. And I wanted it to be, you know, a guy watching TV late at night, but I wanted the pictures to be watching him too. Oh. And so it was sort of a collage of these ideas that I had seen on Big Happy Funhouse, that blog, which with all these vintage wonderful photos. In fact, he's selling Vivian Meyer photos now, and also in interaction with my family. And so from that point, I collaged lots of large image paintings together where I would even try to make it like a comic book page. I started collecting vintage photos while I was doing this, and I realized that I could use them, so I went into the photo booth thing. And the photo booth, I also had an environment designed with it. So at a couple of the schools, I went out and I bought furniture, installed curtains, and had these things hanging, and I provided costumes, and I had photo booths where my students would actually, and friends who were coming, posed in these photo booths. I think you were in a couple of them as well. And I was really excited by the fact that I was interacting with other people. So when that project kind of finished up, and you know, you have to move on to new things. And I was thinking, how do I use all of my web expertise and my blogging and my friendliness really on the web? And so I started making films from the stories that I got. And then I started making art history videos that I would put online. And now I've got like 160 videos and a couple of free classes that people subscribe to. So I'm kind of like, I like giving stuff away. So whenever someone contacts me, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'll send them a drawing or something if they send me their address. And I've turned it into looking at other people's Pinterest accounts and looking at the things that they're totally into, and also talking to my friends about the images that they're into. And lately what I've been doing is making sort of more disposable kinds of art that I can sell for very low prices and kind of give them away in a way. And they're based on images that people have really voted up on Pinterest. Some of them are sports images. Some of them are film noir. Some of them are just people interacting in a genre scene. And lately, I've been doing a whole series of homoerotic and heterosexual pinups. And they're sort of like cliches and stereotypes. And so people, and I put them on Facebook groups, and people really interact with me and they comment on these things. And a lot of them are meant to be kind of funny. And so maybe it's humor and wanting to interact and sort of give things away with people is what keeps me going.
Wow. I mean, seriously, I know a lot of artists in my life, even more artists, but I've never met anybody as prolific as you are. And also as kind of like you were saying, something that's more casual or quick, like you're doing these watercolors, right? Where you're just kind of, I don't want to say whipping them out, but I can imagine, because you just, how many pictures do you paint a week? I mean, I can't.
I'm a psycho. So my wife kind of, we have a schedule worked out where I'm only allowed to paint certain times, or it's not quite like that, but it's like, I know that I want to spend evenings with her. So I get up in the morning, I'm totally psyched, I have all these projects, sometimes it's hard for me to go to sleep. And so I have a lot of time off because I'm a college professor and I teach art history, and I also teach painting and drawing. So I'm always in art, always thinking about it, on the way to school, on the way back. So I always have like 100 projects planned. So on like summer now, I have 2 months off. I get up in the morning and walk the dogs and go back to the studio and just go into bliss. And you know, lately I haven't even been turning on the radio in the studio because I'm having so much fun working. So today I made 3 watercolors.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it was really fun. It's fun to make art, and it's fun to interact with other people while I'm doing it. So half the time I'm making these watercolors, I'm looking at other people's Pinterest accounts and looking at other pictures that I'm planning on using. So.
And that's really cool that you've been able to kind of get so connected with people, because like you said, artists usually don't get to connect with a lot of people.
No, you know, my shrink, you know, we actually talked about the fact that sometimes I'm lonely and I wanna reach out to other people and I wanna communicate with them. I think that's one of the reasons why I make so many art history videos that have nothing to do with me other than being a college professor, and people keep writing to me, are you charging for these? Why are they free? But like, I think it's because artists in the studio, you do things alone, but what you're doing is you're making an end product that's meant to communicate or touch someone else. So I try to make them beautiful. I try to make them have a significant content or an interesting subject matter. And I also really try to make them fit in with the context of the culture that I'm in. And I love the culture we're in. I love what's going on the internet with all these people giving away all this free stuff and all this interactive art that it's not really commodifiable. And so I guess some of the paintings and stuff are commodities, but I'm selling them at prices that I would be willing to pay if I was buying them. So.
That's amazing. I mean, in a certain way, you're the reverse of Andy Warhol, and I do want to compare you to, like, because your work
so
is
funny you should say that.
your work is very pop, you know, and you're not doing the Campbell Soup thing, but you know, there's this pulp fiction element that's kind of pop, and yet, you know, it feels like you said, you're pricing it is so that people can buy it, which is what art should be about anyway. So, I mean, for me, you're almost the perfect artist.
Thanks. Well, if I lose my day job, I don't know if I'll be able to do that, but I'm going to keep doing it as long as I can. Yeah. Thanks.
Well, I hope to get you on next one of these next couple of shows and talk about some more of your work. And thank you so much for coming, Kenny.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's nice being able to talk to you about this stuff, you know, and sharing it with another artist.
And also, we could have my shrink call your shrink for lunch.
Yes.
That's next.
My shrink
on
is
Culture Connects.
very off-putting sometimes.
Oh. Anyway, thank you again for coming.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
And I guess we can just keep
we'll
talking.
just keep talking about, like, Lewis Carroll. We can quote poetry and the Canterbury Tales.
We didn't get to the art history part, too.
Oh.
Did you have